Welcome back, Warriors. Oh, man, those were some awesome weapons. I know you couldn't see because, like, we were off camera there, but, like, this is the first time I'd seen most of those, too, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, it looks amazing, as usual, right?
Yeah, they're awesome. So it's super cool. Hope you enjoy those. Look forward to them next week. But we are ready to kind of jump into our next segment. And joining me on the couch today to talk about some patch notes and also a new gameplay improvement is, you know him, you love him, the Lord and Savior JC is on the couch today. Yay!
Hello.
Lord and Savior, indeed.
Clapping at home, I'm sure.
Complete newcomer. I've never been here before.
Never here. First time. Welcome. First time.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. Yeah, it's been great.
I've never spoken to you before.
Not once. So, but speaking of first time as well, we are joined by Agat, one of our graphics programmers as well. So Agat, welcome. Very nice to have you on the stream.
Thank you.
Cool. Do you want to maybe tell kind of to the community a bit of what you do, like for the project?
What do you reckon we're going to get in these patch notes, boys?
I'm a graphics programmer, so anything that's related to our rendering engine, things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think Agat is the pure definition of first time, long time, right? You've been on the team for how long now?
So I've been on the team since 2014.
Yeah, so 9 years.
Almost 10
right?
Wow.
Yeah, almost 10 years. It's crazy.
She is like
an long
OG,
time.
OG.
By my watch.
Holy
Okay,
fuck.
so wow, amazing stuff. And so graphics programmer, the rendering, all that stuff. So the reason why the game looks incredible is because of you. It's okay if you want to take credit for that.
Exactly.
There it is. She took credit for it. There you go. It's
because
done.
of me. So no, just thank you, Nolan. And as you just said, we're always trying to improve Foreigner's visual quality.
That's right.
That's why I'm very happy today to talk about a new graphic feature, new graphic option that's called local tone mapping.
Nice.
So what is local tone mapping?
I was going to ask because, it's one of those buzzwords, and I don't know if it's a buzzword per se, but, you hear it around, and you just try to pretend like you know what they're talking about. But, I'll be honest with you, I don't. So could you explain a bit about it?
I'm here for that. So
right.
tone mapping, without the local, just the tone mapping. Tone mapping is the name of the transform we apply to the frame to send it to your monitor or TV. Okay. So we render the frame, then we do tone mapping for it to go on your TV. And that transform, we offset it using the average exposure of the frame so that it's different if the frame is very dark or very bright. But as you can imagine, it does not work very well in the case of frames that have like a lot of contrast. For example, if you're in a dark room and then you see the sky through a big window and you take the average of that, well, what happens is that you lose a lot of details in the very dark and in the very bright parts of the frame.
Okay.
That's why we did local tone mapping. So the idea of local tone mapping is that instead of using one average value, we are now using multiple exposures, meaning the dark parts of the frame are not going to be exposed the same way that the bright parts of the frame. So we get back those details without losing the overall quality of the look of the game.
And we can kind of see
you can see on the video,
Right, so basically, like from what I understand, because also a bit of a neophyte on this thing, because I'm not a graphics programmer clearly, but it's kind of like the brightness, right? So you kind of adjust the brightness depending, because normally you apply it to everything, and it kind of if there's like light and dark, it kind of all gets down to the middle. Whereas this, it makes the bright areas brighter, and the dark areas like a little bit darker, I guess. So you see a lot more of the detail. Like I think this is one of my favorite ones because you look at it and the detail and the texture right above the archway.
Okay, that actually does look way better.
So much more. You see the texture really, really well. It's super cool.
Yeah, you can see all the barrels and weapons and details around in the dark areas, but the sky looks exactly the same. It's not like blown out.
Wow,
super cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you can really, really see the difference here, and it looks incredible. Really good stuff.
So how do we turn this on?
So local tone mapping is a graphic option in our quality mode on current gen, so PS5 and Xbox One X, and on PC, of course.
Xbox Series X.
Xbox Series X, sorry.
I get confused with a lot of
it's very, and on PC, and so it's disabled by default, so I really encourage you to go and try it, and I hope you'll like it.
Nice.
On PC, go turn it on like right now.
Yeah.
And if you
maybe next week.
Next week. Yeah, of course, next week. And then if you put on quality mode, for sure, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that and kind of explaining.
It's pretty cool.
I feel like I know a bit more about it now, and I appreciate that. And again, I will say this once, I'll say it 1,000 times. I'm always impressed by the fact that we just have people on our team like yourself who just continue to push improvements and continue to just like push on the quality and the features of the game like this. After 7 years live,
the game
like,
is gorgeous.
It's amazing
it's gorgeous, isn't it?
Are able to still continue to do new things like this.
The game does always
like
look gorgeous.
That's really cool. So thank you very much for sharing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Are you a violent man? Not really.
Moving on from that too, we have
not until I need to be.
Patch notes,
balanced stuff to talk about.
Okay.
So,
All right.
JC, do you want to walk us through it?
Yes. So let's go. So patch notes for.
Here we go, boys. Here's the juice.
So first up, we have something with the Dodge Bash changes, right? So if you've been playing, if you were there last year, we pushed changes to everybody that had a front dodge bash that was 500 ms, right? We made them faster. We put them in 433. But then what ended up happening was that we had a bit of an unexpected thing that happened, which is it widened a gap in which your opponents could dodge your front dodge bash at a much wider window without being able to be punished whatsoever. That was not our intent. And so we were doing a couple of things to make sure that this situation doesn't happen again. Just to be clear, on live before, when they were 500, there was 2 one-frame windows where if your opponent dodged in any of those windows, they were 100% safe. Clearly, it's a one-frame thing. It was super hard to time. Yeah. In this case, the window was a bit larger. So what we ended up doing is that we adjusted the time, the tracking of all of these front dodge bashes so that you have to dodge them 100 ms later to properly, for the tracking to kind of really break and to make sure you're going to dodge them. So it means that early dodges will be beaten by delayed bashes. Late dodges are beaten by either early bashes or like front dodge into guard break. So we've adjusted that like really hardcore to make sure that there is no more of any of those windows whatsoever, so that we really go towards the intention that we have, which was making those attacks like really good openers and ways to open up your opponents.
So does
and not
that
have
fix
moments where, well, I don't care. I'm just going to dodge at this timing, and I avoid.
Does that fix the issue now?
The purpose, right?
Is that a good fix?
It took us like a bit of time to figure that one out, but now it's going to be live next week, so that's great.
Nice.
On top of this, to make sure that the front dodge into guard break worked, we also did a pass on Conqueror, Yorm, and Zanhu specifically because these 3 heroes had a longer front dodge recovery.
Oh, nice.
Because of that, the front dodge into empty guard break would not catch those super late dodges.
Gotcha.
So because of this, we've lowered that by 100 ms. They're all I think they're at 900 now for all of them. We have they've been lowered by 100, but I think they're all at 9. So because of this, it only applies to those heroes. But because of this, you should be able to reliably really catch all those super late dodge attempts.
Nice.
If you need to, but if you've buffered your...
Conk doesn't need the dodge recovery. Yeah, but he's just explained why.
So that kind of works. On top of this, we've also applied changes to Medjai and to Tiandi. So for Medjai, we had a little experiment going where we did the front dodge bash at 100 ms in their front dodge instead of at 3 because Axe mode was really, really underperforming. But that was a mistake, right? Like it happened. We're all human, and it's okay. But that was a mistake. The biggest issue it caused, outside of being very, very, very strong from neutral, is that there's, in some cases, if you hit Medjai with a light and then you did a heavy that was slow enough, Medjai could recover fast enough, buffer into a front dodge bash, and then beat the following heavy, which was really, really something we did not want to happen. So we re-standardized for Medjai. It's okay. It still works really well at 300. We're going to be good, so that's good. And also for Tiandi. So Tiandi had another issue where before these changes on live, if you had Tiandi and you did palm into light finisher, and you canceled the recovery of your light finisher with another palm, like front dodge palm, you could get interrupted by the opponent. Those changes created a situation where this could not happen anymore. And so you could say, yeah, it's the same on like Orochi, for example. The difference is Tiandi's front dodge light is undodgeable. So with Orochi, if you're facing an Orochi, if you see that this is happening, you can buffer a dodge and you're going to beat the palm and the front dodge light. Whereas with Tiandi, you could not. So the only option that you had was I have to make a super difficult read against the bash or the light that's undodgeable. Yeah. And so for this, to fix this, we basically just delayed the entry into palm strike at 366 in the front dodge, right? So it was at 300. Now it's 366. Palm is still 433. So when you add these all together, it kind of comes to the exact same timing as we had before. This is very specific to Tiandi because this was going to be really frustrating.
I'm
now,
so
if
glad
you
that they
match
addressed
this
this.
Situation, you're going to trade, and since you're trading against a bash, well, you win because Tiandi's not going to get any damage. That kind of works out there. Works super well, and that really helps resolve those really frustrating situations that we've been seeing a lot of with Tiandi.
It's always amazing to me, like with just like a couple frames.
I'm very happy that they.
It's crazy. Like sometimes you do something with one frame and then it breaks everything. Sometimes like 1 or 2 frames it changes everything, but it also like those single frames sometimes mean the difference between something is reactable and something isn't.
Right.
And as we've talked about before, at 433 it's unreactable for everyone. And so this is great because with these fixes as well. Let's say you get matched up with players that are like super strong, right? That are reaction monsters. They still can't reliably dodge these bashes and have the good thing. They can react to their front dodge, but they still have to make a read as to what you're going to be doing, or you're going to buffer it, delay it, whatever.
Nice.
So because of this, it really equalizes the playing field and it makes it a lot more viable with absolutely everyone. So that's
thank God.
Nice. And then next up, we have some changes to Hitokiri, which I find it interesting because I've been looking a lot at the minion team compositions, and there's a nice, cute little pairing with the Hito and Pirate these days that are like, this kind of cool. But yeah, so for Hitokiri, we've done a couple of changes here. Nothing overly major, but still enough to give the hero like really nice quality of life changes, right? So first of all, Endless Myriad, which is the Infinite Chain Heavies. They now gain uninterruptible stance at 100 MS. It used to be at 300. Now at 100, we really, really want players to be able to use this hero, use the heavies, target swap them.
Hyper armor monster.
And having that armor kick in a little bit earlier means you're less vulnerable to peeling. You can trade. This was the original intention of Hitokiri as well, to be like a big trading
It's a buff,
hero.
isn't it?
We had the heavy on red meme that when the hero launched. Which
I remember
was
those days.
Buff and nerf?
Right? And it's okay, like again, but with this at least like it's in chain, so it's a lot, it's less problematic. But it still works really quite well. So that's amazing. And to go with this, we've also adjusted the weapon trajectories for all of her heavy attacks on the sides to have better range. So they go a little bit above, like they go a little bit further on the weapon. They're a bit flatter. Again, this is to really give the hero really good team fight ability, be able to trade, use those attacks, defend yourself while attacking. It's something that we really like to have on certain heroes. Hitokiri is one of those heroes, so that's great. But to also compensate for these buffs as well, we also removed the uninterruptible stance on Meikai Rift, which is her light finisher. Before you would use it to maybe use that as a trading tool, right? But the damage on it is lower. It's slow, so the armor doesn't last as long. So there's all those little issues here that are not as good. So we decided let's remove it from there. It's not really as necessary anyway because the armor is better on the heavies. Right. And we've also increased the chain link timing to Ray Kick from light attacks to be 133 MS later. So this might be like, what does this mean? But basically it means that if I'm in neutral, I hit you with a light, and then I go into kick, you can interrupt me with a light on your own. Right? Okay. So we really want to, promote the usage of
heavy on red,
heavy attacks or charged heavies. Make sure you confuse your opponents, like partial charge, no charge, full charge, whatever you want to do. But the idea is we really want to encourage the use of her heavy attacks as much as possible.
These changes next Thursday
as well. After a heavy, you don't have those issues, so you're a lot safer. And so again, it's really push forward for those heavies as much as possible. I'm super excited to see where that's going to go, especially as I said, which is interesting, right? We've never really
I don't
seen
care about the hyper armor being removed from
outside of when she launched, and now it seems she's usable in Dominion with some pairings. It's super interesting. They're able to do super interesting ganks. So I can't wait to see if this ends up also affecting her viability in 4v4 game modes, which is super cool, right? It's one of those heroes that's been underperforming a little bit, so we're trying to adjust top for it a little bit to make sure that we kind of make smaller adjustments to the meta to really equalize things even more. We're in a much better state than we've ever been, right? I look at tier lists from players and they're super compressed, and even they're not only are they super compressed, but also the difference between the tiers is not as huge as it used to be, right? We used to be difference with A tier and C tier is completely unplayable, and A tier is you have to play these. And now it's C tier, they're good, they're playable still. They're not the best.
It's true.
Still playable. So
he's right.
Cool. So we're really happy. The entire people on the fight team, and pretty much everybody on the team, is really happy about the fact that all of these changes we've been doing are great. We've been doing a lot of reworks. It might look like it's slowing down a little bit because we're doing these changes. We're doing a lot of stuff. But at the same time, we would try to be a bit more focused on specific changes to specific heroes, to bring them up, to adjust for the meta, and not make super huge, wide sweeping changes to specific heroes. Because then it kind of leads to like way bigger shakeups in the meta. And then
basically just
much as daunting players come in, there's like
fast changes
to every character. Like, what am I doing? What's happening?
Fixes
so we're
and
kind of trying to
Hitokiri buffs.
Still do changes.
That's
we
it, I
still want to
think.
do balancing. We still need to do these things. But we're trying to be a bit more reactive and a bit more focused on what we do than trying to do like big, major, wide sweeping changes.
Yeah. Well, and again, big system changes like this too, just like with the dodge bash.
Yeah,
so
right. So that was pretty big. But yeah, we're trying to push towards making sure that like every hero is viable, right? Just having these changes makes Conk, not Conk, but Conk, but Centurion, for example, way better because if all of a sudden his Legion kick is fully unreactable, you actually have a really good opener with Centurion, which lets you go way better into like what your other options are.
It's the chain heavy, not the neutral heavy.
We're trying to make the game like a little bit more accessible. We're trying to make sure the skill gap is still there, but that the ways that you initiate with opponents are less about am I able to react to the attack itself, but what am I able to react to that's surrounding it, right? So it makes for a much more dynamic gameplay in that aspect. So it's really, really cool for us.
Nice. Well, very cool. Well, thank you for sharing those updates there. So that's awesome. And